before. Father Hugh Barbour is our chaplain. Father, thank you for being with us today.
Glad to be here.
And Chris Check, thank you for coming.
Thanks for asking me on, Cy.
A bit of an emotional day. It's very hard to see what the flames devouring a treasure of Christendom.
Well, first of all, remember, the flames are devouring the wooden infrastructure, but not the stone walls and tracery.
Okay.
So it's going to be there. They're just going to have to restore it. That's all. But I mean, it's not like it's not going to come crashing down.
Well, but
except for the wooden parts.
Well, there was considerable concern that with the wood gone, it would come crashing down. But in the last hour, the fire marshal says they believe they've saved the main walls of the cathedral
and the relics.
And apparently the relics are
crown
out.
Of thorns
and some very important artwork is out.
St. Louis's relics and
relics of the Passion.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, and I don't mean to quarrel too much with our chaplain here, but the interior of Notre Dame is completely ruined.
Right, of course.
And so yes, it can be restored and rebuilt, but it is a capital loss to Christendom. I was walking down past Todd Aguilaro's office earlier this morning when the news of it was first announced, and we were watching the flames on the live feed from the BBC.
It's awful. Yeah.
And both of us remarked almost simultaneously. It's sort of we had the same sort of the reaction that we had watching the trade towers.
Yeah.
Now, no loss of life here, thanks be to God.
Yes.
But a building of, I won't even say historical significance, but that's not really cultural, spiritual, theological significance. I'm trying to think of a shrine in Christendom outside of St. Peter's or the Hagia Sophia, which is now a mosque.
Which is now outside of Christendom.
A museum or a mosque. I'm trying to think of a shrine. I mean, France is the eldest daughter of the church, and there's something about the French side, and Father Hugh, of course, can speak to this better than I can, although I will tell you a story that Father Hugh told my boys a number of years ago. There's something about the French. They're even as decadent as they may appear to us now, or modern, there's a resilience in them. Millions of them turned out when so-called gay marriage was proposed.
Right.
Millions of them turned out in protest. So maybe we haven't heard the last from the eldest daughter of the church.
And unlike our media or the British media, the French president, when he briefly commented on it, because of course they're waiting for everything he actually mentioned the word Catholic. He actually said that first of all, our feelings are expressed towards the Catholics of France.
Right.
So it wasn't just an historical monument, emotionally important for people that visit
Everybody
Paris.
on CNN was
the first
saying,
group he mentioned were Catholics.
Whatever you may believe, this is an important. And I keep thinking, well, why say whatever you may believe? That it's okay to say this is a treasure of the Catholic
of Christendom.
Yeah.
But I think though it's good to keep things in perspective historically. How many important churches have burnt down and been restored over history for various reasons?
Right.
And Notre Dame, the Huguenots desecrated it.
Yes, they did.
And then the French Revolution,
Yep.
it was desecrated. It was turned into a storage place. When the church finally got use of it, it still was mostly destroyed inside.
Well, it was this temple of reason, and the prostitutes were dancing on the high altar.
And then finally, when the bishop in Paris in the 1830s, 40s was able to get it restored, that what's being destroyed now, all the nice gargoyles and statues and the spire and all that, that was part of that 19th century restoration.
I see.
What had been previously
even the current spire, which is now burned, is 19th century.
Yeah, but they did a great job, and they can do it again. And so all these rich EU people, they're going to have to put their money where their mouth is and rebuild it.
Well, they will. They will. Cy, I caught some of the news broadcast at lunch today, and there was some concern that the walls might fall out. But the reality is that Notre Dame de Paris is an example par excellence of Gothic and High Gothic architecture, which is the combination of the buttress and the flying buttress. and then of course the vaulted ceiling. And these things work in combination to distribute that weight so that you can have a number of effects, two of which are get as much light into the space as possible.
Right.
So in these thick walls, building as many windows as possible, not just in the nave, in the central nave, but also in the clerestory as well, which is that sort of portion of the wall above the first walls of the nave. I'm making gestures with my hands here. I realize I'm on a radio program. But then also those flying buttresses, which are added a little bit later and not during the initial construction, make it possible to get that ceiling as high.
Yeah.
The idea is to get this. So when you're in the nave of a place like Notre Dame or Reims, and Father Hugh can correct my poor French
That's
here.
good. It's Reims. That's
Reims,
pretty good.
or
Beats
Amiens,
Reims.
Amiens, or frankly, the greatest cathedrals in the world are in France, or Chartres.
Well,
Chartres.
England has a lot of great cathedrals. But
Sure, they
they're just
do.
Not ours
Just
right now.
they're just not as great as the ones in France.
Wait,
but
England has a lot of great
I wouldn't
cathedrals.
say
It's
that.
just not ours right
They have
now.
one. They have one or two. Lincoln.
Yeah.
Ely.
Oh, they're great.
Come on.
Ely, which Henry VIII destroyed the
Canterbury.
abbey of.
Well, let's
Yeah, I know,
stay a
but
little
still,
bit
they're
focused.
still
Okay, sorry.
No, so
Father Hugh's always
the
got to come to the
effect-
defense of the English.
The effect then
They're the
of
Normans. They're the French in the end.
the
Yeah.
effect of these
Well,
medieval
exactly, they brought
cathedrals is light and uplift.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Towards heaven.
so the spirit is meant to feel incredibly edified and light by something that is actually an engineering marvel. It's very,
Ponderous.
very
You
hard
take
to
something
do.
that's very ponderous and
Yeah.
make it look like it's just floating there.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's
yeah,
the
that's
idea.
And one of the pioneers, if not the inventor, though it goes so far back, who knows, is the spiritual advisor or close advisor to Louis VII, who was the Capetian king at the time, and his advisor was a man named
saint.
Louis
Saint.
VII.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah, Louis
Yeah,
VII.
sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
so grandfather or great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather of the saint.
Yeah, of the saint. But nonetheless, Abbot Suger, looks like sugar, S-U-G-E-R. He builds Suger. He builds Saint Denis, which is the first example of what we now call Gothic, right? And a way of trying to get the sort of the Romanesque style, as Father Hugh has described, higher and airier. And so
Yeah.
Saint Denis, which is on kind of the north side of Paris right now, built over the tomb of Saint Denis, one of the patrons of Paris.
And of the kings of France. too.
Yeah, where all the kings are buried there in the crypt, also desecrated during the Revolution. But it's this French abbot, also instrumental, Louis VII, in the founding of the University of Paris, what we now call the Sorbonne.
Yeah. But it's important to remember, though, that, I mean, even though there seem to be good explanations for what happened, in the last month there have been about 50 or 60 desecrations and fires in Catholic churches throughout France, including
Saint-Sulpice.
just in the middle of, Saint-Sulpice, just in the middle of March, Saint-Sulpice, which is probably the most iconic church in Paris after Notre Dame for the French.
Has a magnificent organ.
Right, and it's a Baroque structure. They haven't done anything to Sacré-Cœur, but they've had, and Saint Denis, there was also another fire attempt there. So there is this spate of attacks on Catholic churches that goes unreported in American media. Although I found amazingly a Newsweek article about it. I couldn't believe that. I was kind of stunned that they actually had something about it. And the French bishops don't want to talk about it because they don't want to.
Well, then you create a kind of
Right, you create
mania
enormous
for it. Yeah.
Islamic riots throughout Paris, and the part where Notre Dame is just sitting in a little island, completely surrounded by, might say, potentially hostile territory. So they have to be very careful how they interpret this event.
when we
Well, the truth will out. I mean,
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
construction sites are notoriously dangerous places.
Well, St.
Right.
Paul's outside the walls in the 19th century, the basilica over St. Paul's tomb, it burnt down, and it was because they were doing restorations,
Right.
and someone left a candle in a rafter while they were working.
All right. I would like to open up our conversation just a little bit about Notre Dame when we come back, because, as you said, France is called the first daughter or the youngest daughter,
Eldest daughter.
eldest daughter of the eldest daughter of the church, which I'm sure bothers Armenians. But
Well, I mean, which pope was it that said that? There's some pope that gave them that title.
I don't know how far back that goes.
Probably to keep
But
the
you
French
think about
kings on their
you
side.
think about
Yeah.
there is no France without the Catholic faith. France never exists without
And
the Catholic
side-
faith until the modern period.
Well, European culture and French culture in particular.
So,
certainly.
but we do have to take a break, Chris.
Okay.
So I want to just leave that there. Talk a little bit about Clovis and the Merovingians.
Saint Remy, not the,
And maybe
not
we'll
the
throw
brandy.
the Joan of Arc in
Or
there.
brandy,
Because what I really want to get to is a comment that George Weigel made today on NBC that maybe this will foster a reconsideration of the rejection of Catholic culture and
Please
That'd
God.
be a good thing.
Please God, may it
Also.
do.
All right, we'll take a break and we'll discuss that point when we come back on Catholic Answers Live.
Got questions? Visit us today at Catholic.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their faith and values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Morning Glory. It's Catholic from coast to coast.
Suffering is, instead of seeing it as a participation in Christ's passion, in union with his redeeming sacrifice on the cross, we see it as, we have to avoid pain, we have to avoid suffering. People need to think that it's not about avoiding suffering that we think is meaningless, it's about finding meaning in the suffering that's unavoidable.
Morning Glory. Talking about everything important to today's Catholic. Tomorrow morning, 7 Eastern, on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Father Hugh Barbour, our chaplain, is here with us this hour, and for a bit of the hour, we have Chris Check, president of Catholic Answers, here. And the burning of the Cathedral of Notre Dame today in Paris is big and shocking news. It feels like an event not just of material but also of spiritual significance, particularly coming at the beginning of, or at least in the early part of the Passion Tide. It all has a very well. Let me say this. Watching it this morning, at first I didn't realize how serious it was, and so I was a little bit flip about it. And I know I apologize for that, Chris. I didn't realize how serious it was, but as soon as you realize how serious it is, and you see Parisians gathered watching this and horrified at what's happening, it has the quality slightly of a metaphor of we didn't appreciate the Catholic culture in our midst until it collapsed. And I believe that's happening everywhere in the world right now. There is a collapse of Christian culture. There's certainly a rejection of Catholic stuff. And it's almost as if you can't see how horrifying that is until the final collapse comes, until the moment where it really. So do you see?
I think there's a great deal in what you're saying, Cy. That beautiful and magnificent cathedral, maybe second in fame in the world to St. Peter's, or like I said, the Hagia Sophia,
right,
was built during what the unbeliever Will Durant would have called the Age of Faith. And if he and his wife were still alive, writing, if he were a believer, he would have called that book The Age of the Faith. But nonetheless, the Age of Faith. Cardinal Newman said more than 100 years ago, we live in the age of unbelief. So we live in the age of unfaith. So built in the age of faith and burning in the age of unbelief, there's a great deal to reflect on there.
But do you think the ordinary Frenchman still, maybe unconsciously or simply by way of habit, still assumes all of that, the faith and everything else, as the backdrop for the culture that he possesses? And
I think very much
more
so
than
in
Americans.
And so, right,
Absolutely.
much more than Americans do. Yeah,
right.
Of course, we assume a certain evangelicalism and our national identity, but they assume this, and so it is an opportunity for some of them maybe to be shaken up a little bit and consider, well, what was this actually
What does it mean?
Symbolic of,
I mean, even just to ask the question, why don't we build buildings like that now? Why do we? Why are
We
our
are at St.
great
Michael's
buildings?
Abbey.
What? Yes,
We're
you are.
at
At right, but
it's
our,
not Gothic, but we're building
our
it.
buildings are buildings of commerce. Even government buildings
Sure.
are primarily Soviet looking. I mean, not all of them, but so there's this idea that once there was this time that unbelievable propaganda over the last 500 years to denigrate medieval people of Christendom, but there once was a time where you would literally spend hundreds of years building a building to the glory of God and for the purpose of doing so beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah.
And it took that. I mean, you consider even in our own nation, the Congress of the United States chartered the so-called National Cathedral, the Anglican Cathedral in Washington, D.C., which was, where it was in the late 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only finished
Very recently.
in the 1990s, the very end of the 1990s, because it was a fitted stone cathedral built in the European style with no reinforced concrete, no steel, nothing, just built by, and they used Italian craftsmen. And it wasn't finished until then. And that's modern America.
Right.
You couldn't do that now. You couldn't get what's her name from Minnesota or Alexandria to support these things. But at that time,
There
you
was a
could
time
get the
when-
Congress to support the building.
It shows how far things have declined
Yeah,
since then.
so,
But to
yeah.
Father Hugh's earlier point, there are still displays of public piety that take place in France that on that kind of scale do not take place in the United States. And I think especially of the Chartres pilgrimage, which is a several-day walk from Notre-Dame de Paris to Chartres, and it's traditional Catholics.
Which is Notre Dame de Chartres.
Yeah, right,
Great.
precisely. So, and it's traditional Catholics, Latin, what we would call Latin Mass Catholics. The Society of Pius X sends people to that.
They have their own now. They no. Once it became
Okay,
in Union
or
with
the
Rome,
Fraternity of
they-
St.
they
Peter.
go in the other direction. They go from Chartres to Paris.
No-
So
very
the
well.
first
So that you
Chartres-
can end
yeah.
it with a good meal.
So Chartres to Paris is just the Catholics' union with Rome.
Mr. Historian, could you remind us, a man born while there were still emperors on the throne in Rome, Clovis, why is he important to this whole story?
So what was that, Father?
Yeah,
Clovis wasn't emperor. He was,
But he was the king of the Franks,
Right,
or,
king of the
or
Franks,
if
right.
you would say the war chief of the Franks. Really, I
Right.
mean that's probably a better way to describe him.
the
But
descendant becomes the emperor.
yes, Charlemagne. But
what I meant was
I
there
know
was
what you're-
still an emperor in Rome, Augustulus, when
wasn't
Clovis was born.
yeah, although
Oh, yeah, just barely,
Although
yeah.
the extent to which he would be considered an emperor, I mean, by that point we'd had barbarian emperors sitting on the throne, or sitting.
So who's Clovis?
in Rome?
That's us. That's our ancestors.
That's right, the barbarians. So Clovis is the man really who is instrumental, even as the Rome, which we mark the date of the collapse 476, but it moves east, takes up residence in Constantinople. But Rome in the west does start to collapse. And then you have principals, men like Gregory the Great, who come around about a century later, a little bit more, who realize that the infrastructure of Rome, of the Roman Empire, has collapsed, and it's time to start looking north to the French, to the Franks, right, to look after the church. And so what does, well, in fact, it's begun before Gregory the Great, but Gregory the Great sends Augustine, who becomes Augustine of Canterbury, up to the English. He passes through the Franks. They're shortly out of the woods themselves, but it's Clovis, this war chief, who is baptized by Saint Remigius,
Right.
or Saint Remy,
In
if you
Reims,
drink,
right,
yeah,
yeah.
if you drink the brandy, and this takes place at Reims, which then became, and the tradition, the medieval tradition, is that the crowd had pressed so far in around Saint Remy that when he went to baptize Clovis, he realized he'd forgotten the sacred chrism, but he couldn't go back into the cathedral because the crowd was so close around him, and he couldn't keep the king waiting. And so there, the Holy Spirit, in the form of a dove, or a dove, holding the precious oil, descends and hands it to him. So he's able to baptize Clovis, and France is converted. And then that Reims becomes the baptismal site of all the French kings. But
In the 500s, we're talking about.
Yes.
This is
Right.
in the 500s.
But of course,
Yes.
what they were really, the thing that was particularly interesting with the Franks is that the Visigoths and the other Germanic tribes had all converted to Christianity, but they converted to Arianism, not to true Christianity. And so Clovis and his descendants, they converted to Roman Catholicism.
And Clovis is inspired by his wife, Clotilde.
Right.
Clotilde.
Who is a member of the Gallo-Roman
Yes,
aristocracy, right?
and so it's his wife who says this is the path, Clovis.
And so it was also about orthodoxy, because it wasn't just conversion to Christianity from paganism, it was conversion to Orthodox Catholic Christianity, as opposed to a heterodox version.
And so now
that's what actually saved Spain also.
But when I say there is no France without the Catholic faith.
Precisely, because now there is a political infrastructure in the form of Clovis's kingdom in which the faith can now be spread and thrive.
Right. So
that did not exist in Rome.
These the church and the state of France are together 1,500 years.
This
so
is why
more than 1,500
This is why
years.
we called her the eldest daughter.
Right. And so this is the foundation of everything we enjoy.
And then centuries later, France is preserved from the forthcoming Protestant errors in the person of Joan of Arc.
Now, in the meantime, a guy that you're probably familiar with, his name is Thomas, and he's from
Something
a
or other.
little town in called Aquino, I think, and he studies and teaches at the University of Paris.
Right.
And
yes.
what years is that?
That's in the 1260s.
So he would have seen.
So he would have seen the
these
building of Notre Dame
and
Cathedral.
that rose window.
Well, the finishing of it anyway. It began in 1180 or so.
That he would have seen that rose window.
Yeah.
Now destroyed.
Yeah, sure.
Is the window destroyed? I didn't even think about that.
Well, but the
they survived World War II, right?
I mean, the window is not the medieval window, though. So just take comfort. They restored it, in the 19th century, but the tracery is still there, so they can put everything back together again.
Okay, so but that's the window they took out during the Second World War, right? Because they were afraid that a bomb would shatter it.
They did that in Chartres. I don't know if they did in Paris or not.
Yeah, I can't answer that either.
But you think what I'm getting at is the history here is we're not talking about hundreds of years. We're talking about hundreds upon 1,000.
Yeah, century almost.
And from Clovis through that short guy. Say it. I can't say it. Pepin.
Pepin the Short.
Pepin? Oh, okay. I didn't know how the French pronounce it. I hate to pronounce French.
We say Pepin in English. That's
all
okay.
right, Pepin the Short. Charlemagne, the recovery of all the Irish monks coming over and helping out Charlemagne.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and then you have the building
Alcuin.
of what I'm trying to get at. Alcuin, the great Alcuin.
Charles
right,
Martel stopping the...
that before Charlemagne,
That's
Charles
early.
Martel
Right.
stopping the Muslim invasion that was coming up through Spain. The hammer. Okay, so then what I'm getting at is out of the ruins of the Roman culture that had died, in France is reborn a new culture. Or maybe I shouldn't have said
the Roman
died.
culture didn't die.
Oh,
No,
okay.
it was just enfeebled because their infrastructure
Well, the
was
church
destroyed.
takes over the Roman culture.
But you would never see a building like Notre Dame in Roman culture. The Romans didn't build buildings like that.
Well, they built some pretty grand public buildings, yeah.
Certainly they did, but not with these two, with these two elements that we're describing in the first segment, this effort to get those walls and those walls as tall as possible, to let in as much light as possible, and to make that ceiling as high as possible. Even the ceiling is vaulted.
It was a Roman conception of worship, like they built beautiful temples, but people didn't go into the temple to worship God.
Oh, right.
They stayed outside.
Yeah.
And the priest went in, and then they bring the image out, and they would have the sacrifice in the open air in front of the temple. But the Christian conception of worship, and the Gothic cathedral represents it perfectly, was the basilica, which is a Roman public building where people did assemble, but combined with the idea of worship, where you combine those two things so that you actually have a place where the people of God are contained. They're all there together in these four walls, worshiping God, and it's not just simply under the skies like the pagan gods, sub divo, they said, under the heavens, but rather so that the king is on his throne, and it's the combination of the civil and religious. It's pretty astounding.
And the form over time becomes cruciform,
right,
with the addition of the transept.
We'll take some questions for the chaplain.
Yeah, I do have to answer. These are good questions.
We got good questions for the chaplain. We'll do that. Thank you, Chris. Check.
God bless you.
We'll be right back with more on this very sad day at the loss of the Cathedral. At least for now. It took 200 to build. It'll probably be back to itself in 200 from now.
Call us now with your question on Catholic Answers Live.
In his new audio presentation, The Very First Fathers, apologist Jimmy Akin takes you on a tour of the earliest Christian writings outside the New Testament. From the most famous figures and most notable works to those lesser known but no less important, this pivotal time in the development of the early church is revealed in fascinating detail. Jimmy shows how, even in the first century after the resurrection, it was necessary to defend and explain truths that are still under attack today, such as the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist and the perpetual virginity of Mary. The Very First Fathers is a compelling look at the dawn of the Christian age and edifying listening for anyone who wants to understand and defend the full truth of Catholicism. Order your copy of The Very First Fathers today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
This is Archbishop Paul Coakley of the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Love and beauty. As a little girl, Dawn Eden Goldstein knew that she wanted those things, that in them somehow she would find God. Over the years as a rock journalist, she moved among some of popular music's best-known artists, straining to capture that transcendent love and beauty in every note and lyric. In Sunday Will Never Be the Same, Dawn recounts her spiritual journey in beautifully wrought detail, mixing powerful accounts of trauma, healing, and epiphany with funny anecdotes from inside the music scene. It is the rare conversion story that delights as it inspires, amuses as it edifies, and ultimately lays before the reader a lived testimony to the transforming grace of Christ. Order your copy of Sunday Will Never Be the Same by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
We're discussing the important role of women in the church on tomorrow's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Call in with your take on this important topic.
Now let's get back to more of Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host, joined now in studio by our chaplain, Father Hugh Barbour. Father is a Norbertine priest, former prior of St. Michael's Abbey up the road, where they are in the midst of building a magnificent new church. Our prayers with you for success on that. Is it going to take you 200 years to build that one, or
No, it will be finished. We'll probably move in during the fourth quarter of next year.
Oh, wow.
But it's all the towers thrown up against the heavens, and the bells are already
wonderful.
Molded and everything. So it'll be great.
Well, we have a bunch of calls for the chaplain that I would like to get to, and let us do that. Let's go to John in Michigan, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. John, your question for Father.
Hey, John.
Hey, how are you, Robert? How are you today?
Just great. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm a Catholic, but I have a question about the faith. The question is straight from the Bible. It says, in the Bible it says, those who do not believe are condemned. My question is, how are they condemned if they out of just belief? They've never seen. I've heard many answers to it, but nothing really ever made sense to me. This question just baffles me all day and every day.
All right, it's a little bit hard to hear, so I'm going to just repeat it real quick.
I got it.
No, but the listener may not have. How can it possibly be said, as it is said in Scripture, that we can be condemned for our unbelief?
Well, one has to understand the Scriptures speak in what we call a very formal sense. That is, as our Lord says, without faith it is impossible to please God. That is, that the human soul, in order to have access to a relationship with God, has to have a trusting faith in Him and in whatever He may have revealed for human salvation. Now, that doesn't exclude those who don't know exactly what those things are, but what it does require is that the human heart be open to God's revelation and sincerely desire to receive it if he should offer it, because they don't know before they know. But it's not a categorical, like if you just happen not to become a Catholic, then you're going to hell. It's more the virtue of faith. The virtue of faith, that means a habitual disposition of the human mind and will to receive willingly those things which God has told us about himself and our destiny for our salvation. So it's something which is really a case-by-case basis. You can't just generalize and say, guy X, because he left the Catholic Church because he was angry at his sixth grade catechism teacher who slapped him on the wrist or whatever, that he's going to hell. No, because God judges according to the disposition of the human heart, and he may be a man of great faith, but he may have misunderstood certain of the conditions of it. So you have to think of it in terms of the other virtues, like a person who's not just can't reach heaven, a person who's not chaste can't reach heaven, a person who's not kind or charitable can't reach heaven. So also with faith is the foundation of our virtues, our openness to God and our willingness to receive everything that he offers to us for our salvation. So that's what it's about. And of course, the scriptures speak very categorically, but that's in order to make us understand how serious this is, that you have to have faith in order to please God. So, and any good man wants to know how to please God.
John, what do you make of that?
That's a really, really good answer. But so you're saying that out of works is how we're saved, and faith in God follows up.
Well, that particular, when our Lord says, those who believe will be saved, and those who do not believe will be condemned, he's not really talking about the faith works discussion. Because this is the root of it. That is, your works have to be works that stem from faith, and your faith has to be willing to undertake or to do those things which God has asked you to accomplish. And so it doesn't really dichotomize or contrast with the question of faith and works. It's simply, and it doesn't mean that if you believe in the Christian religion, you're automatically saved in that sense, the way it looks, just like you're not automatically condemned. What our Lord looks at your heart to see if it's open to his grace in order to receive what he's revealed and then to act upon it. And that's where the question of believing for salvation is. As St. James says, faith without works is dead. And so he says, you show me your faith without works, and I'll show you my faith which as exercised through my works. So, but in any case, it's not just a bare external issue of pertaining to the church or believing certain things. It's more than that. It's a question of the disposition of the heart towards God's revealing love.
John, thank you very, very much. I hope that was helpful to you. Let's go to Deborah in Los Angeles, California, watching on YouTube Live. Delighted to have you with us, Deborah. Your question for our chaplain, Father Hugh Barbour.
Yes, hello. Blessed Holy Week to all of you.
Same to you.
No, you too.
I have two questions. Thank you. I have two questions about confession. One is it necessary for the priest to understand your sins in the same language that he speaks? And two, can a priest change the words, the formula of absolution?
No, the priest, answering your second question first, the priest needs to indicate in the form of absolution what's happening. So he has to say, I absolve you from your sins. Now, if he were to change the words to, I forgive you your sins, that wouldn't be invalid, but it would be incorrect because the church's terminology is absolve. But the two things that need to come together is the priest's action in setting the person free from the bond of sin and setting the person free from sins that the person has committed. So you have to say, I absolve you from your sins. You can't just say, I forgive you, period, because you say, from what? A debt, or what are you talking about? And so basically he has to indicate what he's doing for you. So I absolve you from your sins in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But that part isn't necessary for validity, but just I absolve you from your sins. But if you were to say, I forgive you your sins, that would be okay, but it wouldn't be as valid, but it wouldn't be the proper liturgy of the church.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I went to
What
confession once to a bishop who just said, "I forgive you. I forgive you." He didn't mention my sins. I was kind of amazed. I said, "Go back to seminary, Your Excellency." Anyway.
Did you commit another sin?
No, I didn't say that to him directly.
Oh, yeah,
I just
okay.
went out thinking, well, I'm glad it was just all venial, you know.
I think, Deborah, did you have something else?
Yeah, I was wondering, do they need to understand this in the same language?
Oh, yes,
so
of course.
they
That's a good
know
question.
whether or not they-
Now, the thing is, if you find yourself in a position where you don't have a priest of your own language to confess to, you may go to confession to a priest who doesn't understand your language or you don't understand his. But of course, it's you know, it's on the honor system. That is, you express your contrition, and he absolves you. But it's better than to make the resolution that when you are able to find a priest that actually understands you, to go to confession to him as well. They used to publish these nice little guides for confessors, where the penitent would have the little paper in his own language, and the priest would have one in the penitent's language, and it was all coded, you know, A1, A2, A3, whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
And he just went down, you know, the list, and it was not a very personal way to do it, but it was a way they did it in the past, like during wars and stuff like that, or in cities that had lots and lots of immigrants, you know, in the States. They had these little guides. But in principle, it's possible, but just keep in mind that we shouldn't seek out a priest who doesn't understand our language. Right.
This is one I'd like to have somebody who doesn't understand me here.
No, but
right,
it is
gotcha.
true. It's kind of like with general absolution, something like that.
Deborah, thank you very, very much. Let's go to Mike in Arizona watching now on Facebook Live. Mike, your question for our chaplain, Father Hugh Barbour.
Hi, Father Hugh.
Hello there.
Is it ever okay to lie under any circumstances? Like, what if it makes the difference between you, like, losing a job or even dying?
In Catholic teaching, lying is never permissible under any circumstances. Now, that's different from saying that lying is a mortal sin in every circumstance. Most of the lies people tell are not mortal sins. They may even be just imperfections or sense of weakness, you know, convenience or whatever.
Right.
Certainly with our children, we know that if lying is a mortal sin, well then, you know, did you take the trash out? And the kid says, yes, and then he runs and takes the trash out, you know.
Yeah.
That's pretty common.
Wait a second. I used to do that all the time.
Right, of course. You know, you little liar.
All right, now you've straightened me out on another thing. Okay, so.
But the fact is, in and of itself, because the foundation of human relationships, and therefore also of charity, is the ability to trust other people. And when they deliberately misrepresent in speech or other signs what they know to be true internally, then that's an evil. You know, it undermines human relationships and charity, and so it's never permitted to lie. It is permitted to not to give people information they don't have the right to have, especially if they intend to do evil with it. And it's also permissible to use social expressions which everybody who has any common sense understands as a polite way of putting you off. Like, you know, in the old days when someone knocked on the door and wanted to talk to Mrs. So-and-so, the lady at the door would say, well, Madam is not at home, meaning she's not at home to receive visitors. You know, she's not available.
Yeah.
You know, because you wouldn't want a culture where, you know, the kid answers the phone and someone asks for his mother, and then the kid says, well, she doesn't want to talk to you. No, that doesn't work, okay? And of course, now with cell phones, we pretty much don't have that situation anymore. So there are polite forms to put people off, which, if they're understood generally as polite ways of avoiding being harsh, also don't count as lies. So there are little gray areas out of politeness or consideration, but basically we're never allowed deliberately to deceive someone else by our speech, contrary to what we know to be true. Now, people give the example of, like, you know, the Nazis are there and they're asking, are there any Jews in the house? That kind of thing, you know. And let's just say, number one, if someone outright lied, it could hardly be described as a sin of any great magnitude. Right? So there's one, you know, venial sins are venial after all. On the other side, one can use mental reservation and just say no, meaning in your mind, they don't normally live here, I'm just hiding them, or some other meaning that you have in mind that the people that are looking with malicious intent could discover if they kept pushing the point, but you're trying to put them off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay too. That's called mental reservation. But let's just say basically you're never permitted to lie. And the Greek fathers are a little looser on this than the Latin fathers, but let's just say we follow St. Augustine's teaching. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church, it's absolutely categorical. If you read the section on lying in the Catechism, it'll be very clear you're never allowed to tell a lie.
Does that help you, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah.
God bless you. Thank you.
Okay,
Now I
God
don't know
bless
if
you.
it really helped Mike or if he was just being polite.
Well, I mean,
there.
there are some complications. I was trying to cover everything.
We have people that help us promote Catholic Answers at the parish level, Father. These people are called parish partners, and they are wonderful because there's a lot of people who don't know anything about Catholic Answers Live, and we need more people like that. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you this, just maybe you would know somebody who could talk about that, who could come on the air and talk about
helping us out
at the parishes.
Oh, okay.
Like Marie.
Oh, there you are.
Hi, guys.
You weren't wondering why Marie sat down next to you and put headphones on?
I figured knowing her, I figured that she would eventually make her presence understood.
You're not wrong.
Tell us about Parish Partners.
I was wondering myself, so I figured she's going to tell us eventually.
We have a program. As Cy said, it's called Parish Partners, and quite simply, it's a way for you to share with others Catholic Answers Live. So I have lots of promotional materials like stickers and flyers and business cards that with the permission of your pastor at your parish you can place in the narthex and have people pick it up and learn about Catholic Answers. We're very grateful. Right now we have about 150 parish partners, and we're looking to expand that number, but those are people from all over the United States. Unfortunately, we cannot have international parish partners yet, but maybe that'll come in the future. So if you'd like to sign up to be a parish partner, it's free, and all you have to do is go to CatholicAnswersLive.com and just click on the button that says Become a Partner, and you can receive some of the promotional materials and spread the word, help spread the gospel, spread our mission, and we'd be very grateful. So CatholicAnswersLive.com, and then just press Become a Partner.
And while you're there, sign up for Radio Club.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
A very wonderful woman I knew had 4 children, and all 4 died. And somebody went up to her one day and they said, "Oh, what a pity." And she said, "Oh, no, what a blessing." If we don't begin to look at everything with the eyes of Jesus, you will become helpless and hopeless.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
We have a big problem. Our culture is dying, and souls are in danger of being lost. The answer is conversion to Jesus Christ in His church. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a Catholic organization, and we have hundreds of teams spreading the good news throughout the country. But we need your help. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
We are so blessed here at Catholic Answers to have the chaplain we have, Father Hugh Barbour, Norbertine priest and former big deal. Now, wait, that came out wrong. Sorry.
That's good. I love that. Very good.
But now he's stuck with us.
Former big deal. Now just big.
Now, well, yeah, ain't we all? You know what? We're going on a pilgrimage to Rome in November. You should come and be our chaplain.
Yeah, I think I will.
We would love it if you would come to Rome.
Coming along for the ride, yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
They have a little mattress in one of the lifeboats hanging on the edge of the ship. I'm gonna sleep there.
It's not a ship. We're going to a hotel.
I know.
Has no one told you we're going down, right down by the Pantheon at the Kelowna Palace Hotel?
It's absolutely lovely place to stay in a perfect location.
Yep. And we want you to come. Just go to Catholic Answers
all the
Pilgrimage.
Holy places and with Chris and with me and all these people that have been to Rome, and I lived in Rome for 8 years, so you'll be people that know all about it.
What about the steps? The
Holy Stairs.
The Holy Stairs, yeah.
Well, those were recently restored. They were just blessed last week.
But you got to go up on your knees, right?
Right. That's the trick.
I'm gonna do it. I got to get.
Yeah, the St. Helena brought them from Jerusalem, from the Praetorium of Pilate.
She did a lot of good for a lot of people, St. Helena.
Yeah, she certainly did.
As a matter of fact, I think some of the relics that are in Notre Dame Cathedral are from her, relics of the True Cross.
Right, of course, yeah.
All right, Giuseppe in England. Wow. Called from England. Nice to have you, Giuseppe. Your question for Father.
Well, it's been a long time, hasn't it?
It has. It's always nice to hear from you. No, you two don't start talking Italian. This happened last time he called. You two started having a conversation in Italian.
Perché no?
No. È sempre un piacere di parlare.
Sì.
Altretantissimo. Why do they have me here?
Father, the question, before Si gets a bit disappointed.
Sì, poverino.
I've become a Latin mass goer myself.
Good for you.
Officially Catholic now, and I'm going to do the Shout Walk next year.
Oh, good for you! Wonderful.
What I was going to ask you was, in the old rite, they used to baptize babies and put salt on the tongue to show up for the thirst for the Eucharist. Why they decided to stop doing that?
Well, the rite of putting salt on the baby's tongue was the rite of the early catechumenate for the adult converts. All right, salt was placed. There were different rites that were preliminary to baptism that took place over a period of months. And of course, when infants were baptized, it was also continued with the infants. For example, St. Augustine, when he was a baby, he was enrolled as a catechumen, and the salt was placed in his tongue, even though he wasn't baptized till many years later. But the symbolism of the salt, I mean, that's a beautiful interpretation, a thirst for the Eucharist, but actually it's a symbol of purification. Salt has an abrasive, purifying quality, and so it was thought of as something which actually, like, for example, if you have old iron pots and whatnot, or iron pans, they're cleaned with salt, with the salt rubbing or tempered with salt. So it was more the ancient tradition that things that are salty purify and clean. And so it was like that was the original symbolism of the salt. Just like spittle was also regarded as possibly purifying, because spittle is slightly salty as it comes from our system. So that's why our Lord spat, to heal the man. So, but I like the allegorical interpretation of thirst for the Eucharist, but I don't think that's the original meaning. I think it was more a rite of purification, a symbol of the purification of the heart.
Okay, Giuseppe.
But the liturgists got rid of it because they lack imagination, and they get rid of all kinds of beautiful things, So I won't speak for them.
That's why I'm a traditionalist Catholic.
Right, good. You're right.
So I think stuff's
Bravo, Giuseppe. Peppino.
I don't.
Io vado a Roma quest'anno.
Vero, benissimo.
Torni presto.
Devi venire con noi facciamo questo pellegrinaggio a novembre.
Ma voi quando ci vate?
Oh, okay, okay.
He's wanting to know when is our pilgrimage. You were just announcing.
The pilgrimage is November 4th through the 13th to the city of Rome.
Oh, what a shame, because I'm going in October.
Yeah.
Well, I'll come over early. Maybe. Oh, no, we have to go to Australia. I mean, we get to go to... Well, I don't know. I'm supposed to talk about that. Okay, you're getting me in trouble, Giuseppe.
Yeah.
Back to what you were doing there in Blighty.
Buona Pasqua quando viene, Giuseppe.
I got to ask you a question, because somebody's asking this online, and I should have asked you this before. With the burning of the Cathedral Notre Dame today,
or the fire,
there.
We're not so sure people burned it down. Yeah.
No, but okay, but fire consumed a lot of it. But the people keep talking about the crown of thorns is there. Do you know about that? I frankly had not heard that before, that the crown of thorns.
Well, the relics of the crown of thorns, which are of course in the same time from St. Helena, and they were kept at Jerusalem, but St. Louis of France at the time of the Crusades brought back significant portions of the relics of the crown of thorns and put them in a beautiful reliquary, which was conserved not in Notre Dame, but near Notre Dame in the so-called Sainte-Chapelle. It's a beautiful Gothic chapel that was a chapel of the thorn, of the crown of thorns. So it's a very important medieval relic, very much venerated and preserved up until the present. And so it was good that that was one of the things they were able to rescue.
And if I may, the historical provenance of something like that, is it just by faith that we say that's the crown of thorns, or is
Well,
there...
I mean, it has the evidence of human credibility. You know, we know at least it goes back to the 300s.
Oh, okay.
And then you just say, well, you know, it's not impossible. I mean, the scriptures indicate the precise placement of our Lord's burial garments and the
Right.
veil over his face and so on. And so it's not beyond imagination that the faithful would have preserved certain remnants of his passion.
Peyton in Virginia, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. You are next with the chaplain. Your question, please, Peyton.
Hi. So I was
Peyton.
calling because I was curious about getting some more information about joining like a secular third order, like secular Franciscans or Dominicans. I guess specifically how to pick which one would be best for you, and when is the best time in your life to try to pursue that just like that calling, I guess.
Yeah, well, of course, the third orders, so-called, were a means of lay participation in the life of the religious orders. And, of course, the most influential, of course, is the Franciscan Third Order, which all the different branches of Franciscans have. Then there's the Dominican Third Order, and there's also a Third Order for the Servites and of course, the Carmelites most especially, and also Norbertines, my order. We have a third order as well. So it's just I think two things. You need to be a third order member of an order that is in your neighborhood. That is, they have priests of their order that are chaplains to you, and you are able to have some connection to the order where you live. And so wherever you live, you're in Virginia there. I mean, you've got the Dominicans there in Washington, D.C. You've got plenty of Dominicans in Virginia, and they have a very vibrant community, excellent Orthodox community there in D.C. But I would just say, and the Franciscans are strong there too as well, I would just say join the one that's available to you locally. And then secondly, of course, you want to be attracted to their spirituality. And of course, a lot of people are attracted to the Carmelite spirituality because of the teaching on prayer. But there are other aspects as well. But you're basically free to choose. But I would look carefully at what's available in your neighborhood with real people, with priests and laity that are actually meeting regularly.
Okay, Peyton?
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Sure. God bless you.
Right, God bless you, brother. Thank you very, very much. Again, a sad day for the whole world. I mean, you lose a treasure. It's a sad day. But
they'll rebuild it, though.
Yeah. I heard an expert talking about it today and said the first thing you have to do is do a complete study of everything, and then you get so maybe years before they even put one stone back together. She said, because you have to study the whole thing, make a very careful study of what's where, and then you can begin restoration.
Yeah, but they'll precisely because it is such an important historical monument, they just can't restore without looking into things more deeply.
Yeah.
That was the style, like in the 19th century when they restored, they just pretty much did what they want to do.
Yeah, just put it back together.
Right, but now they would be more cautious about it. It was interesting, there was an email sent by the Fenice Opera House in Venice, which burnt down twice and was rebuilt twice, and saying, well, don't worry, you can
rise
come
from
back.
these.
Right,
yeah.
right.
May we have your blessing, Father, before we go?
Benedictio Dei omnipotentis Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti descendat super vos et maneat semper.
Amen. And special prayers for all the people fighting that fire still. The good news appears to be that a great deal is, in fact, saved, and thanks to the firefighters who did their job. And I was just looking; it's dark there now in Paris, and they're still throwing water on that. But that's good news. Hey, next hour, Dr. Edward Sri will be here. We're going to talk about a biblical walk through Christ's passion. Hang on just a few minutes. Dr. Sri will be here, and we'll do that on Catholic Answers Live.
Thanks be to God.
Why do human persons have a right to life? What does the Church teach about the morality of in vitro fertilization? How can technologies like cloning, embryonic stem cells, fetal tissue vaccines, and designer genetic screening be wrong if they help people? 20 Answers Bioethics tackles the topics where life, science, and morality meet, offering solid guidance that combines the wisdom of authentic Catholic anthropology with shrewd understanding of the medical and political realities. 20 Answers Bioethics is part of the 20 Answers series from Catholic Answers, offering hard facts, powerful arguments, and clear explanations of the most important topics facing the Church and the world, all in a compact, easy-to-read package. Visit shop.catholic.com today and take a look at this exciting series from Catholic Answers Press.
Wouldn't it be great to have a book to give to anyone to explain exactly why Catholics believe what we believe? Why We're Catholic is the groundbreaking book by apologist Trent Horn. That one book you can give to anyone as a starting point for helping them to find their way into or back to the practice of the Catholic faith. Order your copies of Why We're Catholic today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. This is Tim Staples, Director of Apologetics at Catholic Answers, and I'm here to tell you about a unique new way we've come up with to share the truth of the Catholic Church with young people. Let's face it, many young people today have strayed from the path of faith. How many parents and grandparents have had their hearts broken by seeing young people stop practicing their Catholic faith, join another religion, or even give up faith entirely, often falling into a life of sexual sin. To keep young people strong in their faith, we need to find new and innovative ways to reach them. And to help in that endeavor, Catholic Answers has just published a brand new science fiction graphic novel called The Big Picture that's especially designed to reach young people. The Big Picture features almost 200 pages of full-color illustrations and a storyline that's easy to follow as our heroes come face to face with the drama and mystery of God's plan for the salvation of the world. Order your copy of The Big Picture today by calling 1-888-291-8000. That's 1-888-291-8000, or by visiting the shop at Catholic.com or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Would you like to become a Catholic Answers Live parish partner? We need you to help us spread the word at your local parish. We'll give you bumper stickers, window clings, flyers, everything you need to let your parish know about the best Catholic radio show on the air. We want you to partner with us. Email us at calpartners@catholic.com today and become a Catholic Answers parish partner.
Do you enjoy tedious lectures full of facts you'll never use? We didn't think so. That's why we're launching the Council of Trent, Trent Horn's engaging new podcast. Every week, you'll get lively lessons in Catholic teaching, as well as a new conversation roadmap that will help you share your Catholic faith with anyone, anytime, anywhere. Visit TrentHornPodcast.com now to find out how you can subscribe to this exciting new podcast.
With the recent commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the release of Humani Vitae, there have been fresh attacks on Catholic teaching from outside and, unfortunately, inside the Church. That's why Catholic Answers thought it critical to provide a vigorous affirmation of Pope Paul VI's prophetic wisdom with our newest book, Inseparable: 5 Perspectives on Sex, Life, and Love in Defense of Humani Vitae. We asked 5 distinguished contributors to reflect on and defend Humani Vitae from 5 perspectives, each of them compelling, together forming a mosaic of truth. Don't be caught uninformed when the topic comes up among friends, family, and coworkers. Order your copy of Inseparable today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or by visiting the shop at Catholic.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host, and this week is the most holy and most important. It's the holiest and most important week of the year for Catholics, actually for the entire universe, but Catholics are celebrating it. And this week, all the readings will, at one time or another, give us different angles on the Passion of the Lord. His walk toward the cross, and beginning yesterday with the reading of the Passion by the whole congregation at Mass. And so here to talk about that from the perspective of the Bible itself is the author of the brand new book. I don't know of brand new book. I don't know why I said that. No Greater Love, A Biblical Walk Through Christ's Passion. That is from Ascension Press. Dr. Edward Sri. Dr. Sri, thanks for being here with us during this Passion Week.
Thanks very much. Thanks so much for having me again. It's been great to be with you again.
Dr. Sri, for those who don't know, is a theologian, speaker, author. He's one of the founders of Focus, and I hear from people all the time. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I've told you this, but somebody said to me, "I need some spiritual reading. I am struggling for spirit," and I started to name some books, whether from the various points in the history of the church. Nothing. And I said, well, have you read Dr. Edward Sri? And he had. And he goes, that's what I'm looking for. I got to go get some more books by him. So you're helping people in their spiritual life.
I'm grateful to know that. Grateful, especially, I'll tell you, this new one that just came out, it's been fun. Over Lent, I've done a number of talks at different parishes and conferences, Lenten missions, and finally to hear people from, who've been reading the book or watching the video series that goes along with it. And it's so fun hearing Catholics really delving into Christ's Passion. And this is the center of our faith.
Right.
It's the center of Lent. It's the climax liturgical year. But as Catholics, we hear these stories every Passion Sunday. And then if you go to the Good Friday service, you'll hear them again. But, like me, I heard them all the time from childhood, and I'm always moved by it because, it's Jesus, and he's being betrayed, and he's being beaten, and Peter denies him. But there's just so much in these stories that I never realized was there, and it was only later on, in graduate studies and over the years teaching on the Passion narratives, really wanted to unpack for the average layperson what Jesus was really going through,
Yeah. Is it fair
JP2 says...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, JP2 says that the Passion narratives give us the fullest revelation of God's love for us. So you can see God's love everywhere in the Bible, but especially here. But on the other side, and this is what I think is most important for us, not just this week, but every week of the year, is that in the Passion narratives, we find the fullest revelation of what we're called to, the amazing love we're called to live out every day in our marriage, in our family life, in our workplace, in our community, that we're called to conform our lives to Jesus, who forgives, who gives his life totally, who surrenders to the Father's will, who trusts, who endures persecution and is neglected, all these things that come up in our daily lives, the little crosses. He shows us the way forward to this amazing love.
And if you think of the fellows on the road to Emmaus there, or the two disciples on the road to Emmaus, and he opened Scripture to them so that they could come to see that it pointed to him, all of it pointed to him, the entirety of salvation history, the entirety of Scripture, the prophets, the Psalms, the Pentateuch, the whole thing points to him. But is it fair to say that in a particular way, it all points even to this week? That's what this is the moment that it's all pointing towards, and when you experience this moment with Christ, then you get what all the rest of it is about.
Yeah, it is pointing all to Jesus, and it's pointing especially to what the church calls the Paschal mystery, the mystery of Jesus' death and resurrection, that our whole lives are supposed to be conformed to. And that's, of course, what Jesus is pointing to on that road to Emmaus. But that's one of the things that you'll find. All of the Gospels are constantly showing Jesus as the fulfillment of prophecy, fulfillment of all these Jewish Old Testament hopes. But man, when you walk into the Passion narrative, it's like every little word, every little detail, just like the mere mention of someone's posture, like the high priest stood up, or Jesus turns and looks at Peter, or Jesus falls on his knees and prays. I mean, that's big. I like to say it's kind of like like you're walking through a biblical minefield. Every little detail is there, and it's charged with all these great allusions to the Old Testament, showing everything's coming to a climax right here. This is the great moment.
Yes, and you do that throughout. Just it's the steps in this walk that he is making towards his crucifixion and ultimately resurrection. And you can easily get caught up in the story and not do the thing that you do here. That, okay, this moment here, this has a resonance that draws from the entirety of salvation history. So I want to ask you about one. Behold the man. When there he is, Pilate. We can. This has a certain. Okay, this is part of the narrative, and this is the story. But if I just freeze frame on that, which is kind of what you do here, you freeze frame on these moments. What's the meaning of that? The Roman procurator or proconsul saying, "Behold the man."
Yeah, so Pilate, that famous line, it's often translated into Latin, "Ecce homo." You see that in Mel Gibson's portrayal of the scene. But you could just think, oh, behold the man. He's just pointing, here's the man. Well, there's great significance in this. On one hand, it points to Adam, who's the first man in the Bible. And Jesus is all throughout the Passion narrative being presented as a new Adam, taking on the curses of the first Adam, who experienced sweat like drops of blood. He was going to work really hard, and he was all of a sudden going to have to sweat a lot. Well, Jesus takes that on in the Garden of Gethsemane with his sweat. Or the crown of thorns is interesting for Jesus, because that reminds us of Adam, who was cursed, that he was going to have to till the soil, and thorns are going to come forth now, and now Jesus is going to experience death. So there's all these parallels to Adam. I think that's in the background. I think the prophecy of Daniel 7, there's a famous prophecy of Daniel 7 about a Son of Man figure that's going to come, and he's going to experience great persecution, but God will rescue him, and he's going to have an everlasting kingdom. I think that's in the background. But the line that I think is most important here, the reason the gospel presents this to us, comes from Zechariah chapter 6, verse 12, where the one of the last prophets in the Old Testament gives this great foreshadowing about how someone's going to come in the future. And he's going to be the great Messiah, the one who's going to rebuild the temple of the Lord. He's going to sit and rule upon his throne forever. He's going to have this great crown, this great king that's going to come. And this whole royal figure, this great king to come, is introduced with these words, "Behold the man." So I think that Pilate probably doesn't even know this prophecy, right? But the gospel puts it there to show Pilate as the unwitting prophet. He's unconsciously, giving a certain prophecy without even being aware of it. He's saying, "Behold the man." Pilate means it just to mock Jesus. Look at this pitiful man, scourged and beaten up. He's not deserving of crucifixion. I mean, look what a pathetic man that is. But the gospel puts it there to highlight, no, if you can see beyond all of this and see it in light of the Old Testament, behold the man, this man who's beaten, rejected, and scourged, he's the great royal king, the Messiah that we've all been waiting for. Zechariah 6:12.
888-318-7884 is our number here. Dr. Edward Sri, our guest. We're talking about No Greater Love, a biblical walk through Christ's passion. Before I have to go to a break, and then I'll take calls when we come back, 888-318-7884. There's so much to digest. I mean, really, I imagine you could spend a lifetime meditating on the passion, and different bits of light would fall here or there, and you would see a greater depth. You would see the way things relate to one another. It's that dense. But it can't be that I know you didn't produce this very fine work to just get people to see, there's a lot of ways in which the Bible refers to the Bible, and this refers to that. What is it that, by appreciating the profound kind of dialogue that between the New Testament writers writing the Passion of Christ and the entirety of everything that came before, what is it that you want people to take away from that?
Yeah, I think, it's not just to be impressed. Wow, the
right.
Gospels all point to fulfillment. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I think that does do something for us on a basic level. As Christians, the more we see these connections, we notice these connections, it just builds up our confidence in God's plan. That there is a God, and He has a plan of salvation. He's been preparing Israel, he's been preparing the Jewish people and all of us to this day to understand his son Jesus. So that's why he gave us that prophecy in Zechariah 6:12. That's why he gave us these events in David's life to foreshadow what the new David, Jesus, would do, or what happened in Moses' time with the Passover, to foreshadow how Jesus is the new Passover lamb on the cross. All of these things were a part of God's plan. And it shows us that God is trustworthy. God has a plan of salvation, not just for the universe, not just for his son, but our own lives as well. So I think on a basic level, that's helpful. But I would go back to the other thing that I said earlier, that one of my big hopes in the book is not only do they come away with more biblical apologetics or nice typology and prophecy fulfillment, I hope that all happens. But as I've been speaking on it, what a lot of people have been telling me is saying, the way you're emphasizing the passion is all about God's love. I mean, I would have kind of known that, but I probably would have emphasized it's about suffering and all the pain Jesus endured. And that's a crucial part of it. But you've helped us to see that it's not all of the blood that was shed that saved the world. It was all the love that was put into that blood that was shed. It inspires me to want to love my spouse more, to love Jesus more in prayer, to love that friend that really hurt me many years ago, to surrender more like Christ does, and to see like a roadmap for my daily life. I think that's my hope. And the church wonderfully gives us this week to really concentrate our efforts on the passion, and hopefully that spills over for the rest of the year, that we'll want to conform our lives ever more to the cross.
Again, 888-318-7884. The number this week, we celebrate, we commemorate, we remember the passion of the Lord. All of which, of course, culminates in Easter, the most important day for us. None of this makes any sense without Easter. But maybe you have a question about the Passion. Maybe you'd like a deeper understanding of why it is that we, well, for example, as Dr. Sue was just mentioning, why does it have to be so bloody? A very, very basic question. So if you have a question about the Passion, you are welcome to call 888-318-7884. And for those of you who are not busy dialing at the moment, I will remind you that we have a free ebook for you. You can get it by going over to Catholic Answers Facebook page right now. You just click on the banner and you can download Cleansing Fire, Purgatory in Scripture, History, and the Church. We're all looking, it's the most common question that's asked of us here at Catholic Answers about what is purgatory, or how do I find that in the Bible, and is it somewhere in church teaching, and how do I give an answer to somebody who has a question about purgatory? So we've got a free ebook for you, Cleansing Fire, Purgatory in Scripture, History, and the Church, right now on the Catholic Answers Facebook page.
Your questions, Catholic Answers, live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Don't you feel sometimes like there's so many people in the world? How does he hear your prayer? Never think of that, huh? Everybody thinks of that. I'm only a little grain of sand on the seashore. Oh, but that's not true. See, God is God. And you and I have to let God be God. I don't know how he does it. He's God.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We're talking about Christ's Passion today. I find it, I have to say, I sometimes find Holy Week daunting. It feels like there's so much that Christ has done for us. It can be kind of hard to think, now I have to respond to this. Like I have to, like It's hard. Do you ever feel that way? Do you ever feel that Holy Week has a daunting quality to it?
It reminds me, if you've ever been around someone that is just an amazing lover, they just they serve,
Yeah.
and they're so generous. On one hand, it's like so pleasant to be around them, but on the other hand, you kind of feel bad because I go, I'm not as kind as this person. I can't reciprocate this level of love, and that's a good uncomfortableness that we should feel, because it's an examination of our own hearts. The good news for us, though, is that Jesus gives us this amazing high call of love that he shows for us on Good Friday. And he knows it's impossible for us to live this out on our own. That's why he sends the Spirit into our hearts to help us to change our selfish or fearful hearts so we can begin to love with his love. Like, we could never look at the cross and go, oh, all right, cool, let me try that right now. Like, it's too hard for us. But with God's grace through the sacraments and the church, then he can begin living the cross through us.
So you're saying it's grace I need? Okay, that I can handle.
It's amazing.
yeah. At a certain point, Jesus says, and it's actually stuck out to me in the reading of the Passion on Sunday, the part where he says, "Let this cup pass. If it's your will, let this cup pass," and then immediately says, "But not my will, yours be done." Is there a thought that he's maybe thinking, well, maybe I don't have to do this?
Is he backing out at the last minute?
Yeah.
Is he having second thoughts? Yeah. I think, the Passion narratives are full of all of these little mysterious lines, and we hear them year after year and wonder, what is that all about? What does that really mean? And that's why I tried to unpack in the book. This is one of the best ones here, I think. I think what Jesus is doing is he's showing us clearly his humanity. Remember, Jesus is truly human. And if he's truly human, he's not looking forward to being rejected and spit at and scourged and crucified. So he's acknowledging in his humanity that, this is repugnant to human nature. But Jesus isn't only fully human, he's also fully divine, which tells us that, he's going to fully accept this. That's what he does in the very next breath. He says, not my will, may your will be done. St. Thomas Aquinas has the best analogy for this. I think it just explains it so well. He says it's kind of like taking bad tasting medicine. No one just says, I want to sit back this weekend, watch the game, and take some awful tasting medicine, for fun. No, you take the bad tasting medicine not for the bad taste, but because, it's going to do something good for you. It's going to bring healing. And that's what Jesus does. He looks death square in the eye, and he's acknowledging this is, as my kids would say, this is yucky medicine.
Right.
This doesn't taste good. He's acknowledging it, but he's going to drink it. He's going to take it, for healing, to bring healing to the human family. I think you have kids, Si, right? You've done this where you're trying to give your kids, the little ones, medicine. My daughter Eleanor this last year was sick, and we had to try to get medicine in her mouth. And she's just like, my wife and I are pinning down this, 2-year-old. And we get her lips open, we pour the medicine in, and finally, what does she do? She spits it all out on us, and she's kicking and screaming.
Aren't they lovely?
But that's what we do. Like, we adult children of God, when God asks us to do something hard, to stand up for the truth, or to forgive someone that hurt us, or to serve and be more generous in some way, we kick and scream, I don't want to make a change, I don't want to do this. Let's remember Jesus in Gethsemane. He acknowledges it's going to be hard, it's going to be a stretch, but he embraces the cross. Let's not drag our crosses and whine and complain like a little toddler. Let's try to be more like Christ. And I think that's a great example of a mysterious saying from Christ in the Passion that helped shed light on our own daily lives.
The other thing that struck me listening to it this week was that twice Jesus is asked who he is, and he says, either you say it or do you say it?
You have said so.
You have said so. And to us, to modern ears, that sounds like he's almost being flip, like, well, you said it, that kind of thing. But what's actually happening there? Why is he responding that way?
Yeah, I can picture saying that to one of my teenagers. You have said so. Hey, what do you?
Yeah.
But the expression, it's in its original context historically, it expresses the idea of somebody speaking some truth. I'm saying, hey, what you're saying is true, but not in the way that you're thinking. I mean, there's some truth in what you're saying, but it's not the full picture. So, for example, when Caiaphas, the high priest, says, I command you, I adjure you, tell us, are you the Christ? And what does Jesus do? He says, you have said so. And what he's meaning is, yes, I am the Christ. I am the Messiah King, the prophesied one. but not in the way you're thinking, Caiaphas, because you want to kind of paint me as this revolutionary, and you're going to tell Pilate I'm this big threat to Rome, and I'm trying to topple the Roman Empire. That's I am the Messiah king, but not in political, military categories. I'm the king according to God's category. I'm going to lay down my life to establish my kingdom. So that's what you have said so means.
So it's a way of saying yes, but removing what the questioner is actually trying to get at is, are you going to give me reason to kill you right now? Like, are you a revolutionary?
Yeah. Yes, I am the king, but not in the
like
way
the way you think. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bill in Broomfield, Colorado, listening on AM 1060. You are up first with Dr. Sri. Your question, Bill.
Hi. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Happy to.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi. So my question is about, in this Sunday's reading of the Passion, I noticed something, perhaps from my own ignorance for the first time, but that after they brought Jesus to Pontius Pilate the first time, Pontius Pilate then sends Jesus to see King Herod. And I was wondering, is this the same King Herod that the three wise men went to visit and had tried to hunt down the infant Jesus when he was first born, or is this somebody different?
It's a different Herod from the same family, though. So the Herod from the nativity story at Christmas, with the Holy Massacre, or the Massacre of the Holy Innocents, is that's Herod the Great, and he was the father, a beginning of a Herodian dynasty of different sons that were ruling different parts of the land of Israel. This Herod that's mentioned in the Passion narratives is one of the sons of Herod, and he was the one that was the ruler over Galilee, and so that's why Pilate hears, "Oh, you're a Galilean? Oh, I'll just send you to Herod, because this is Herod's jurisdiction." So, he's trying to push Jesus off in this problem and say, I'll let Herod take care of it. But no, it's not the same Herod from the infancy narratives, the Christmas story, but his son.
Okay, Bill.
Great.
All right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Love your show.
Oh, thank you very, very much. It would be kind of like the Caesars, like you're Caesar, but you're not the same Caesar.
Yes, yeah, that is exactly it. Although this Herod was a little more politically aggressive, he was kind of trying to take the name of Herod as well for his own kind of political ambitions. So he seized on the family name more than the brothers. So,
oh yeah, and then he and Pilate become friends over Jesus. I think a lot of us read that and go, I don't know what that means. What?
Yeah, we don't know, and that's what there's a lot of mystery here. We don't know the full story, but you get the sense that there was some tension between the two, and somehow this brought a little bit of reconciliation. People speculate it could be because Herod felt flattered that Pilate involved him in the process. So maybe that was, Herod felt, oh, I was important in Pilate's eyes. Herod was longing to see Jesus. He thought Jesus was like this wonder worker and just wanted to see maybe a miracle or something. And so the text tells us that he's longing to see Jesus so he can maybe be able to witness a certain sign. And so maybe, again, Herod was flattered by being a part of the process. We don't know what the dispute was between the two before. This is really kind of the only little data point we have about it. But from this point forward, these two former enemies, or at least rivals in some sense, became more friendly with each other.
It does give you a sense, though, that Jesus' humanity didn't really matter between the two of them. It was that he was a pawn in their larger, well, it's not larger, but what is apparently their larger schemes, whatever they are. MJ in Germantown, Maryland, listening on the Guadalupe Radio Network. You are up next. MJ, your question for Dr. Edward Sri.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for taking my call.
Happy to, MJ.
Thanks. So I actually just got my copy. Amazon was out of stock for a little while, so my copy just came, and I'm so excited it made it before Holy Week. But I was wondering if you had a suggestion of how I should approach it. Do I start at the beginning and make my way through, or is there another way to do it? And then also, if I should have my Bible handy while I'm reading it.
Okay. Well, first, MJ, I'm really grateful to hear that because I did notice over the last week, Amazon did restock it. It was a top seller, so I'm glad to know it's there and people can order it and still have it in time for this Holy Week here for Good Friday. But you can certainly, it's all depending on you and how much time you have, how much you want to go after it. You can read it cover to cover. That's one way to do it and just start going through the Passion narrative. You could wait till like Holy Thursday night and say, Holy Thursday night, I'm going to read the parts about the agony in the garden and the trial before the Sanhedrin, Caiaphas, because that's what's happening that night. That's one thing I always like to do on Holy Thursday night to Saturday morning is just kind of read the little biblical parts that were happening as they were unfolding, hour by hour, kind of, as best as we can guess, but he was in Gethsemane, he was betrayed on Holy Thursday night, and then that late at night he was under trial, and you can continue reading that trial early that next morning, maybe before the Sanhedrin. Then you switch gears and you go to the next phase of the story, which is he's before Pilate on Good Friday, and you maybe read that in the morning, and then he's sent off to be crucified. Then you read the next major place he goes is at Calvary, and you read all of the scenes there. That would be one thing you could do with your Bible, just reading it, or you can use the No Greater Love book as your guide through that. I'll give you another idea. One other thing you could do is simply read the last 7 chapters on the 7 last words of Christ. It's a wonderful thing to do on Good Friday, to contemplate his last words to us on Calvary.
MJ, thank you so much for that question. No Greater Love, a biblical walk through Christ's passion. Dr. Edward Sri is the author and the producer of all these materials, and he is our guest this hour. Your questions right after this.
We're here for you. Give us a call today on Catholic Answers Live.
Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" Turns out that today, as back then, this question has a lot of different answers. So many groups want to appropriate Jesus, tweaking his identity until he looks and sounds just like one of them. But then you no longer have the Lord, says apologist Trent Horn. You have an imposter. In his new groundbreaking book, Counterfeit Christ, Trent exposes 18 phony versions of Jesus that we encounter today, helping you to recognize the fakes when you see them, explain why they're phony, and make a case for the full truth and beauty of who Jesus is, the Christ, the Son of the living God. Order your copy of Counterfeit Christ today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Love and beauty. As a little girl, Dawn Eden Goldstein knew she wanted those things, that in them, somehow, she would find God. Over the years, as a rock journalist, she moved among some of popular music's best-known artists, straining to capture that transcendent love and beauty in every note and lyric. In Sunday Will Never Be the Same, Dawn recounts her spiritual journey in beautifully wrought detail, mixing powerful accounts of trauma, healing, and epiphany with funny anecdotes from inside the music scene. It is the rare conversion story that delights as it inspires, amuses as it edifies, and ultimately lays before the reader a lived testimony to the transforming grace of Christ. Order your copy of Sunday Will Never Be the Same by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
We're discussing the important role of women in the church on tomorrow's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Call in with your take on this important topic.
Now let's get back to more of Catholic Answers Live.
No Greater Love, a biblical walk through Christ's passion. I have the book in my hands. Dr. Edward Sri is our guest, and there's no way you're going to get the video materials sent to your house, so that means it's too late, right? You can't get the videos for Holy Week?
Well, you can rush deliver them through Ascension Press, but but you can watch them live on online streaming. So ascensionpress.com, you can right there be able to watch the videos where we filmed right at these places where the agony took place, the trial, the carrying of the cross, and it's so moving because you can, I mean, I don't know if you've been to the Holy Land, I'm sure many of the listeners have, but when you go to the Mount of Olives, we know this is the Mount of Olives, and you can picture this is what Jesus saw, when he was here. Here's the Garden of Gethsemane, and there's these olive trees that are like 1,000 years old, and the root system goes all the way back to the time of Jesus. So you touch the olive trees, you're kind of coming in contact with
Isn't that
the time of Christ, and it makes it all real. He came here and wept and prayed, and it's an agony for me, and it's very moving. We want to give people a chance to kind of visualize where it all took place.
So if you go to the Ascension Press website, you can, right now if you want, you can get those materials and watch them as you prepare for the Triduum.
Yep, they can go right there and they can get online, watch them today.
All right, I want to go back to callers, but I got another guy I want to ask you about, Simon the Cyrene. Is he a hero? Is he just what is that about? That we're told to help someone carry their cross is this one very, this is the heart of Christianity, but he didn't have a choice. So in what way, what am I to make of Simon the Cyrene?
Yeah, as a kid, I remember doing Stations of the Cross and like many of these little devotional books. It's like, be like Simon, help people carry their crosses and be compassionate and Christian service and all that. And it's a wonderful message. But even as a little 7th grader, I was kind of like, well, he didn't volunteer. It's not like he woke up on Friday morning and says, okay, it's prison ministry day. Let me go find a criminal to help. No. He was forced to do it.
Yeah.
Why is he such a model? I think Luke's gospel tells us something very fascinating here. One little detail that we heard yesterday in the Palm Sunday liturgy, because it was Luke's reading, it tells us that when the soldiers forced him to pick up the cross, he carried it behind Jesus. This one little detail, like I mentioned earlier, like one little word like that has so much meaning. Like why is that significant? Well, what does Jesus say many times in his public ministry? He says, if you want to be my disciple, what do you need to do? Take up your cross and follow me. And Jesus is showing that's the criteria of being a disciple. What's Simon doing? He's a model disciple. He's being portrayed this way. So I think it's Luke's way of subtly pointing out something that many of the early Christians saw, and that is Simon of Cyrene was transformed through his encounter with the cross, an unexpected cross. He didn't plan this. He didn't volunteer. It just kind of happened. And as you know, those are the hardest crosses. I could say, I'm going to give up my favorite beer this Lent. That might be hard. Or I give up my chocolate or this show or whatever. But it's the crosses you don't plan that are the hardest, aren't they?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Because you get smacked by the sense of unfairness and how can this have, and I'm so important to the universe, and how can a person like me be carrying a cross now? And right, it's very hard to accept those ones that just come out of nowhere.
And that's what happened to Simon. I mean, think about his day. He's just coming in. Now, he's from Cyrene, which is a city in North Africa with a large Jewish population. He's probably one of thousands of pilgrims coming into Jerusalem for the pilgrimage feast of Passover. And so he's just planning on, I'm going to go to the temple, I'm going to go worship today. And all of a sudden, his whole day was interrupted. And he has to do this really arduous task and a very shameful one, carrying the instrument for torture and execution. And yet, somehow, we don't know what happened, but something happened through his encounter with Jesus and the cross that made him change. And the early Christians saw that he eventually became a Christian. His 2 sons, Rufus and Alexander, became leaders in the Christian community. And so I think Luke is subtly pointing that out, which is a reminder to us that when we have those unexpected crosses, maybe related to health or our job or a disappointment in a relationship, whatever it is, that God can bring some good out of it. And Jesus wants us to meet him there in the cross, not just run away from it.
Dr. Edward Sri is our guest. Up next from Massachusetts, listening on Sirius XM satellite channel 130. That's EWTN. We have Zaina. You are up next. Your question for Dr. Sri.
Hi, Doctor. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks, Zaina.
Thank you. My 9-year-old son always has questions for me, and I want to make sure that I explain this to him properly. Jesus suffered to save us from our sins, but why can we still send ourselves to hell? And I tried to explain it as best as possible. Could you please tell me how you would have explained it?
Okay, I'm picturing I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. So if I was sitting with them and they were asking me that question, what would I say? I would point out that, so Jesus did this wonderful thing for us, to give us this great gift that he offers us. But we have to receive the gift. We have to welcome the gift in our lives. And I might use an example. I'm just coming up with this on the fly, but I think this could work. Is I would say, hey, imagine if there was an orphan in our neighborhood, and we volunteered to adopt that orphan into our family, and we welcome them. We provide them food and shelter and love, and we welcome them here. That orphan could grow up and still reject this gift and say, no, I don't want to live here anymore and run away, or I don't want to abide by these family rules. I'm getting out of here and I'm just going to go live on my own. That person would be free to do that. We're offering an amazing gift, but they still have to welcome it and receive it. And that's what we have to do. Jesus is offering this amazing gift. He wants to adopt us into the family of God, to become children of God, and he wants us into the family of the church. But we can do things and choose to reject that gift and find ourselves on the outside.
Beautiful. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
All right.
Very, very much.
Hope that works.
Let's go to Marguerite in Quincy, Massachusetts, listening on the Station of the Cross. Marguerite, your question for Dr. Edward Sri.
I was calling because I had a question about the Passion of Christ. Was Christ beaten all over his body, or only on the back?
Was Christ beaten, you mean in the scourging? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yes. Well, we don't know 100% for sure. We don't know because we didn't have any video cameras or any record about the scourging other than he was scourged. That's all it tells us. But if you remember, do you remember Mel Gibson's film? If you've seen his film, The Passion of the Christ, I thought that was the hardest scene. I mean, the crucifixion was hard to watch, but man, the scourging, where they just kept beating him, then they turn him over. And they start, just tearing his skin out on the other side even more. Whether there was a turning over or not, again, it's the kind of thing that could have happened in a scourging. He could have been beaten all over the place like that. If I had to bet, I bet he was. And here's why. We know that a scourging was used as a prelude to a crucifixion to help determine how long the crucifixion would last. If you want a short crucifixion, you really beat the person down so they're almost dead. If you want a longer crucifixion, it's a lighter scourging, right? The fact that Jesus' scourging only took place, according to Mark's gospel, it took place in 6 hours. That's a very speedy crucifixion. Most crucifixions would take place over the course of a couple of days. So the fact that Jesus is done in 6 hours, he's already dead, is just shocking. I think that tells us that he was already half dead by the time he got to Calvary. The fact that he can't carry his own cross, and the Roman soldiers have to get Simon of Cyrene to carry it, that's also telling us that, that's so unusual. The condemned man always carries his cross, so that they had to find someone else. I think it's telling us Jesus was almost dead when the scourging was done. So as hard as that scene was to watch in Mel Gibson's film, I think something like that probably is a good depiction of what happened. And we don't know for sure, but I would bet he was on all sides just torn apart.
And two, that shroud of Turin that was shown in Turin of the body, front and back. His back looked awful,
Oh, the shroud.
I don't remember what the front looked like.
Okay. Well, first of all, just maybe a word on the shroud, Dr. Sri. I don't know how familiar you are with it or not. It's not something that a Catholic is obliged to accept as the burial cloth of Jesus, although that's certainly a possibility. But I was thinking the same thing when you were talking, that I have seen the images of the shroud, and it does look like someone beaten very badly all over his body.
Yeah, and I'm no expert on that. I would defer to others who would be. But a good point that we don't have to believe it, but it's a pretty moving tradition there in our faith, and it can build us up. And certainly it would. I wouldn't use that as proof text, but if this is indeed the legitimate one, then it certainly would support the other data points that I mentioned earlier about, yes, Jesus would have received. I think we can be certain it was a most severe kind of scourging, which tells me it likely was all sides.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Let's take a quick break. We got more calls for Dr. Edward Sri, the author and creator of No Greater Love, A Biblical Walk Through Christ's Passion. The video is available at the Ascension Press website if you'd like to watch them during this Passion Week. And you can still get the book. Get that delivered in plenty of time for Holy Thursday or Good Friday. Our annual spring store-wide sale continues. Just enter promo code SPRING19 when you check out at shop.catholic.com. Get 15% off your entire order. Everything, 15% off right now. Just put in SPRING19 at shop.catholic.com.
Catholic Answers Live.
Do you want to end abortion, halt the attack on traditional marriage, and ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? To do this, we must convert the culture. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing the gospel in your area, visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
EWTN, teaching the truth.
You have just a beautiful compassion and an affirmation of every caller. You zone right in to each person's need, and then you ask all of us to pray for that person, and I do. I just think you really, really have a great ministry. You just really are tonic and concentrated multiple vitamins for all of us spiritually.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Delighted to have you with us. Our guest is Dr. Edward Sri. His latest work, No Greater Love, A Biblical Walk Through Christ's Passion, a book and a set of videos, and you can get the videos, which I didn't know when the show began. I have since been informed. You can go over to Ascension Press, to their website, and you can watch the videos live there. Jerry in Cleveland is next. Jerry's listening on AM 1260, The Rock. Jerry, your question for Dr. Edward Sri.
Hi, yes. Thank you for taking the call. Doctor, it's a privilege to speak directly with you. My question, and you did so well with the one about how Jesus, how to understand his response to Caiaphas, that I thought you're the person to ask. In the 14th chapter of the Gospel of St. John, during the discourses at the Last Supper, Jesus says, the Father, and of course I'm paraphrasing, but he says, the Father is greater than I because he is before me. And on the other hand, in the liturgy, in one form of the liturgy anyway, there are prayers that say, the preface to the consecration that say that each person of the Blessed Trinity is co-equal. The Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit are all co-equal with each other. So I'm wondering how to reconcile Jesus' statement at the Last Supper with those prayers of the Mass. If you could help us.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's not even. Can we just stay even in John's Gospel? I think because there's lines in John's Gospel where Jesus says the Father and I are one. He puts himself on par with the Father. So you don't even have to go to the liturgy to kind of be wondering what's going on here. He says the Father is greater than I, but then he's talking about how he and the Father are one. And then he also talks about the Counselor, the Spirit, which has all that the Father has, and all that the Son has is given to us through the Spirit. So there's a lot there in a rich Trinitarian theology, and I think you got to look at all of the sayings together. So there's different senses in which one is greater. So the Father is greater than I. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Father is more divine or more powerful or more supreme in that sense, in his essence, but maybe more in terms of the Father is the one who sends the Son. So there's a certain priority in the plan of salvation where the Father is revealing himself gradually throughout history and sends the Son at the climax, the fullness of time. So they are equal. They're both God from God, light from light, true God from true God, as we say in the Nicene Creed. The Father and the Son are truly one. Jesus is truly divine, as the New Testament reveals. But that the Father has a certain a primacy in the sense of he's the one that's sending the Son, and the Son is not fully revealed until he comes in Jesus Christ at the fullness of time. So I think there's like a historical kind of priority order to the Father, but not necessarily saying that he's necessarily, more divine or more God than Jesus is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's very helpful. Could I ask you mentioned Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. Could I ask a real quick question about that?
Yes, please.
And the caller who was asking a little while ago about the wounds and the shroud, the severity of the beating and the scourging and everything. I'm wondering if Mr. Gibson had a source for this, or if it might have just sort of come to him on his own. But has it ever been taught by the fathers or in any place that the reason for the severity of the scourging was because the soul and the actors in the movie brought this out really well, that they could not get a sound out of Jesus, they couldn't make him cry out, and they were almost embarrassed, and people were laughing at them, and they were saying, all right, if none of those got a reaction out of you, this one will.
All right. Is that based in?
Yeah, there's nothing about that I'm aware of, and certainly not in Scripture. I don't know if any of the church fathers mentioned that. What I would say is that there's a lot of artistic license in what Mel Gibson does, and that's okay as an artist. You're making guesses, and he puts Satan in the garden, for example, that creepy Satan figure, remember, that sends a snake. You don't read about that in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but Luke's gospel especially brings out that Satan is present, that you get a sense of he is present there in the garden. But in this case here, I would say the fact that they're getting ready for Passover. The Romans know this. They need this crucifixion to end quickly for the great Sabbath rest on the Passover. So I think that's the primary motive toward the severe scourging. It's also, to kind of try to placate the Jews, one last attempt to show, look at, we gave them the most severe scourging. So maybe for Pilate, it's like, give them the worst one, so that maybe the people will say, all right, we don't have to get them crucified. But in both cases, I think it's the time sensitive matter that I think is driving the severe scourging more than anything else.
Jerry, thank you very, very much. I hope that's helpful. Let's go to Anthony now in Texas. Anthony, your question for Dr. Edward Sri.
I'm a Protestant. I'm trying to convert to Catholicism right now.
We'd love to have you. Has anybody made that clear to you? We would love to have you.
Well, you're the first.
Oh, okay. Well, I hear you say you're trying, because on our part, we'd love to have you.
Okay, I do appreciate that. The church that I'm going to now, they haven't even really invited me, even though I've been a few times. But that's okay. I do have some questions. I do have a question, though.
Okay.
And it's in regard to Matthew chapter 29, 26 verses 39. And it says, and when he went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt." One of the things that I've been struggling with is, well, I do believe in God the Trinity, but, this seems to be Jesus's, most trying time, because he knows what he's about to have to face, but he's God, he's fully God and he's fully man. It seems like the man part in him is struggling, but how can, someone who is fully God and fully man, struggle with this, in the face of what's about to happen?
Are you thinking that his will? I'm just wondering. Is part of your thinking that his will should already be the same as the Father's will, if he's God?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it should be perfect.
Gotcha. Okay. Dr.
Great.
Sri?
Yeah. Though this is a great question. I don't know if you heard, I touched on this topic earlier in the interview, but maybe I can go a little more in depth with this one here. Is I think it's simply in his humanness, if he's truly human, that all that's about to befall him here is not something he would look forward to. And so he's just expressing his true humanity. In other words, if Jesus were not human, then he would go, oh, cool, I can't wait to be crucified, right? But no one that's truly human looks forward to this kind of intense suffering and death, right? So in other words, if he's truly human, this is repugnant to his human nature. And so the words are just an acknowledgement, an expression. This is going to be really hard. But then in the same breath, like the exact same prayer, the very next words, he's saying, but not my will, but your will be done. In other words, if I'm truly human, I don't look forward to this kind of crucifixion. Any human being would wonder, is there another way to do this, right? So Jesus, in his full humanity, is acknowledging like how difficult, how painful this is, as a human would do. He wouldn't be human if he just was smiling and, I can't wait to do this, right? But you do see that he is perfect, in the sense that he embraces this cross. He drinks this cup all the way, to the last drop, all throughout the Passion narrative. But even right here in the same prayer, he says, "Not my will, may your will be done."
But does he have, just to continue with the line of thinking with Anthony, does he have two separate wills, a divine will and a human will?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so there is a divine will and a human will in Christ, and but they're perfectly united. That's the thing. So Jesus is, going back, I don't want to go too abstract here, but the eternal Son of God, long before the world was created, the Son existed with the Father in the Spirit. That Son, at a certain point in human history, about 2,000 years ago, enters into our world and takes on human flesh. So that eternal person takes on human flesh and becomes takes on full humanity here. So he has human senses. He has he comes to know things in a human way, experiencing them over time, like learning how to walk, learning how to write, as we do. As the eternal God, he knows everything for all eternity. In an instant, he just knows everything, right? He created everything. But now he's going to come to learn and experience learning as a human does. So I always make the joke like this: did Jesus know how to ride a bike when he was 6 months old? And most people say no. And I always come back and say, no, he knew how to ride a bike. He knows everything. He's God. But he's going to enter into humanity and come to learn it as a human does, meaning over time, being taught with experience, trial and error. He's going to learn it in what he knows for all eternity in a new mode. So he's learning through a human mind. But he's also has a human will. And that human will is looking at death and knowing that death is coming, and that human will is like, whoa, that's going to be really hard. But you know what? It's not about me. It's about I'm always going to do what the Father's plan is. So his human will is perfectly united with the divine will.
Anthony, thank you. I hope that was helpful. You're always welcome to call here. Nick in Texas, I'd like to get you in real quick. Can you ask your question real quick of Dr. Sri?
Yes, hello. My question was about when Jesus is crucified on the cross, he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's always kind of piques my curiosity as to what it is. Not that Christ, like how you're speaking about his own human will, saying that was him speaking as in like, God, why have you forsaken me kind of thing.
So what is that all about? My God, why have you forsaken me?
Yeah, it sounds like Jesus is abandoned by the Father, but that can't be the case, right? He's perfectly united with the Father for all eternity, even on Good Friday. What he's doing is he's quoting the opening line from Psalm 22. I have a whole chapter in this if you want to read about it more, but he's quoting a line, and that was a traditional rabbinic teaching method. A rabbi would quote a line from Scripture to bring to mind the larger context. So Jesus is quoting a line from Psalm 22 to bring to mind this whole song, which is about a righteous man who feels as if he's been abandoned abandoned by God. But if you read the whole psalm, he goes on and he talks about how, but yet I know that when my ancestors suffered and felt rejected, you were there, Father, and you always, rescued them. And it's a sign that Jesus believes the same thing's going to happen to him. It looks like he's been abandoned by God, but he knows, no, the Father's there, the Father will rescue him. The great thing about Psalm 22 that really ties this all together is it's also a prophecy about Good Friday, because this psalmist, 1,000 years before Christ, was rejected by his people. He was mocked, and the people would wag their heads, and they pierced his hands and his feet. And Psalm 22 says, they took the man's garments, divided them, and cast lots for them. Does that sound familiar? That's exactly what happened with Jesus on Good Friday. He was rejected and persecuted, mocked by people who wagged their heads when they were passing by Calvary. They pierced his hands and feet to the cross. And what did the soldiers do? Take his garments, divide them, and cast lots for them. Jesus is showing us prophecy is being fulfilled. God the Father is going to rescue him on the third day.
Nick, thank you so much for that question. It brings us back around to all of Scripture points to Jesus, and in particular to this week, to his passion. Dr. Edward Sri, thank you so much for taking the time with us. No Greater Love, A Biblical Walk Through Christ's Passion is the book and video set. You can get that over at Ascension Press. Dr. Sri, thanks so much. Really appreciate a wonderful hour.
Thanks again. Blessed Holy Week to everyone.
You too. Thank you. And 2 hours of open forum tomorrow. Any question you got on the life, the faith, the history of the Catholic Church, even Notre Dame Cathedral, it's welcome. We'll see you then, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.